Today, I have such a beautiful conversation to share with you all with Hélène Guillaume. She is the founder and CEO of WILD.AI, which is an app redesigning the essence of female health by helping women train, fuel, and recover based on their menstrual cycle. And I had initially been aware of this, but I went on a deep dive, and it is so much more profound than I thought, because it looks at just, perimenopause, menopause. It looks at birth control. If you don't have a period, it's this beautiful platform that really helps demystify how to take care of yourself with eating and training, along with your infradian cycle if you're having one. And as this is a space that, is lacking a lot of research and information, it's so exciting to have women like Hélène out there making a difference and having research and tools. So we talk about training, we talk about pregnancy and postpartum. It's a beautiful conversation. I'm so excited to share it with you all. Enjoy. Hélène, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So excited to make it happen.
I know. You've been so busy. I've been following you on social media, and it seems like you're speaking at every other convention and all over. It seems like a really exciting time for you.
Yeah, it was a lot of traveling. Now I'm finally back to not traveling, so I'm excited.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. So let's hop right in. I was doing my research, and I found some article about you talking about how you grew up between Belgium, Hong Kong, Japan, and Peru. Is that correct?
I was born in Belgium, then we moved to Japan, then Belgium again, and then Paris for many years. So most of my teenage and young adults. And then moved to Hong Kong, Peru, US, UK, Italy. And now Portugal.
That is incredible. How did that shape your childhood? That must have been a really interesting experience.
I guess my mom is Polish and my dad is Belgian French, and they both came from families that were living in many different countries. So the first time for both of my parents where they lived more than 3 years in a row, it was when we were living all together with my sisters and my parents in Paris. So until then, all their lives, they had moved, every 4 years. So
Wow.
very like on both sides. So it's like come from they moved a lot, and so we moved less, but we still moved, and I think we inherited from that desire to discover and live in different places, which on one end means we are adaptable, and home is where we make it happen, but at the same time it also means we don't have deep roots. So yeah, it has amazing pluses, and but it also has its challenges.
Yeah. Does anywhere particularly feel like home, or is it like you said, you can really be present with where you are?
I think it really is like where I live and where I decide to live. Because my parents moved countries a few years ago, my grandfather as well. So we really don't have a set base, I would say. And now my
Yeah.
house is Portugal.
Well, same, and I love it. So hopefully so far so good.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you are quite the athlete. They talk about ultra marathon runner, triathlete, surfer, skier, ice swimmer. I didn't even know that was a thing. We might need to get into that later. But were you always just incredibly athletic? Was this sort of a life passion from a young age?
I think as a kid, it was just a lifestyle more than yeah. So we did a lot of sports with my family. Like holidays were very sports oriented. So we were skiing every year, up to between like 2 and 6 weeks a year. And then summers we would be swimming a lot or like spending a lot of time in the water. So very active from a family point of view as just education, which I loved, and doing a lot of sports with my parents, and they're both active. And then as I grew up, I just started to go myself into more sports, and just really love the just physical challenges and just pushing myself and having fun while sweating.
I mean, triathlete, ultra marathon runner, that's pushing yourself. You really have to get into a mindset, right? Like, that is impressive.
Yeah, but I think it was just like for me, it was always just like the first ultramarathon I did was I was living with my best friend in Hong Kong, and we were very fit at the time. We were training a lot, and we were doing a just on an Excel spreadsheet like the races we wanted to sign up, and we signed up to like 10K, 20K, and there was this 100K. So my friend said, you put 100K in the list, do you want to sign up? And I was like, yeah, sure. And we signed up and we did it. So it
How old are
started
you?
more from like a fun perspective, and we were training a lot, but it was really part of our life as well.
And what, yeah, how old were you when you did that?
First 100K, I was 21 years old, I think.
Oh my, I was like getting drunk with my friends. You're very impressive. Wait, I love that you said the first. How many have you done?
100Ks, I did too.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Very impressive.
Yeah.
As far as sports go at this moment, are you drawn to one more than anything else, or do you like kind of dabbling in everything?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to a person earlier who lives in Sardinia, and he was saying like more swimming, more like what kind of sports can you really do there? And it's really interesting. I think where I was living really defined also the sports I was doing. So Hong Kong is a
Hmm.
hill, like you open your door and you're on a hill, so it's perfect for trail running. And then I lived
Hmm.
in London, and you can't trail run, so I really got into. I was always swimming a lot growing up, and I love swimming. I had then started running, and I wasn't really cycling besides like anyone would bike, but and so that's how I got into triathlon, because I was living in a city that really is made like it's a good place to train for triathlon. Like I would commute every morning, and in the evening on the bike, so I would spend 45 minutes on the bike, and then I would run and swim, and so it was adapted to the city, interestingly, and that's how I started ice swimming. I was training for a swim run, which is a combination of swim and run between islands, and I was training in the Serpentine in Hyde Park in London, and then the winter arrived, and then the Serpentine gets frozen, so I started swimming in winter, and there's this weird community in the Serpentine, which is really fun, with these quirky people from yeah all levels of society swimming in that pond that is frozen. It's really, really fun, and so I started doing ice swimming, and then I just started loving it. So I was trying to increase my distances a little bit, and
And are you wearing a wetsuit or
no,
just
yeah,
because fun fact, for part of lockdown, the first year of the pandemic, I lived in Cornwall on the
yeah,
beach. And there was all these, and it was great. All of these, what do they call them? The blue tits. All of these like older women, and they weren't really swimming. They were mostly like hanging out in hats and bathing suits in the
yeah.
water in the winter. And I was like, what the hell is going on? But it was amazing. So is there actually ice in the pond and you're kind of navigating through, or does it not freeze?
Very rarely. So like
Yeah.
London freezing nowadays is quite rare, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
most exciting time. Like when it happened, like the club was full, so it's open every day from 5:30 to 9:30, I think, and it's more or less full. But when it was sorry snowing or icing, it was full, full, full because this is the most exciting times. And so sometimes it would actually break the ice, but in winter it would go under 10 degrees, and in deep winter it's around 2 degrees. So it's really cold. Like anything that is under 5 degrees is called ice swimming.
Hmm.
Above 5 degrees is cold swimming. So it is really cold, and then it goes to zero. And yeah, breaking the ice is really fun. It does cut, so you can't really swim throughout the ice. You have to like clear it up first, and then swim. But yeah, it's just like a really fun, quirky thing to do. And then I swam a bit in Russia as well a few times, and there they actually it's part of the culture. So they have these cutouts, pieces of water from through the ice, and they have a little stream, so it
Hmm.
facilitates breaking the ice in the morning because the stream like
Right.
doesn't enable to ice so quickly. So yeah, it was really fun, and then got into surfing during COVID actually, really, and yeah.
Were you in Portugal during COVID?
No, I was in Fuerteventura in the Canaries,
Oh,
and
what a great place
I
to get into surfing.
exactly, and I had surfed a little bit before, but not really. And I really got into there. We were living with friends, and we got really hooked into it all together. So it was really nice because surfing at the beginning is like it's I mean like any sport starting, it's very goofy and it's quite
It's
not
hard.
sexy at all, and it's hard, but it's also like so getting yourself out there is like it's difficult, but because we were together, it was amazing to start together. And we had this perfect setup. So we would wake up before dawn, take the car, and like when with the sunrise on the horizon, and then arrive in the water, swim like not swim, surf, and then go back and start working at like 7:30, 8 a.m. We were working, so it was amazing.
That's an incredible way to start the day. Question about the ice swimming. Is it similar in terms of health benefits to cold plunging?
Good question. I don't know exactly the science and the comparison between both. It's quite different. It's
Right, because you're
I
moving, right? So I
yeah,
think like there's stuff, you're getting your body temperature up.
it's less
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
It's
But
probably much colder overall because I don't know, my impression having been in ice baths where you're immobile and being in water, I cannot explain why, but actually when you get out of the ice swim, it's way colder. Like your body is frozen inside out. Whereas from the ice bath, maybe because the ice bath I've done it where outside it was warm,
yeah.
but yeah, from the ice swim you get out and you're like shivering for quite a long time, and your body is
Yeah.
like absolutely frozen, and then you get a kick. So it's a very different sensation. I have no idea the science behind, but it's quite a different thing. It's also I personally find it more exciting because you are going to the water, you swimming, and the goal is to increase your distance. So you can
Yeah.
quantify it a little bit in a more fun way than just minutes sitting in a bucket. So I personally prefer it, and then it
How
has.
far were you going?
I
Like
was
when
going
you got
200
to
meters, so swim much slower. So my if I'm fast in a pool, I would swim 100 meters in like a little bit under 2 minutes, or 2 minutes 10 if I'm a bit slower, and much more if I'm untrained. And
Mhm.
then if it's in ice, I would be like 3 minutes and a half, 4 minutes, 400 meters. So it's like way,
Yeah.
way slower.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you go in and you like try to have your body all warmed up and like be like it's a weird exercise. It's more of a psychological and exercise than a pure physical exercise. And
Right.
uh, and then and then very slowly, like week by week, you can increase the distances, i.e. the
Mhm.
time.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
I would think your breath would be really important too, right?
yeah,
Getting in and not like wanting to start because the tendency is to want to hyperventilate or something when you're that
yeah,
cold.
exactly. So like actually going slowly is like you could like if you go really quickly in and out, it's like it's fine, but going slowly is also like a way to be able to control your heart rates and
Mhm.
your breath and your heart rate. But yeah, it's very interesting process that I've been through like a few winters, and it's really interesting to see the other people who go through as well because um, it's physiological and you have to improve it very slowly. Like there's no way to improve quickly.
Yeah. 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 Because I think your body would probably freak out and it wouldn't be safe.
Yeah, so it's like and so it is not safe for you. um, but and you cannot do it by yourself because it's not very safe. But yeah, it has like but then the resilience benefits are incredible.
I bet. I
Yeah.
bet. I bet. So you do a lot of really extreme things. Do you find that like the quote unquote runner's high is different from, sport to sport? Is there something that you feel like you get the most, yeah, like you get the highest off of, or maybe you get the most like meditative or mindful effects of? Is everything a little bit different or do you just feel great no matter what?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very different. So I think the hardest sport and the most rewarding sport I've ever done is surfing. And I think it's
Mm,
because the mix of hormones that we get are quite different. So all the other sports I do, it's pretty predictable. Like skiing is a
Right.
little bit different, but the mountain
Yeah.
doesn't move. So
Yeah.
there are a lot of risks in skiing. And if you're going off piste and you're going to a place you don't know, you have
Yeah.
to be cautious. I mean,
Yes.
if you're not cautious, you might lead to accidents. So, but it is, I guess it's cycling. You know, you're going out and you know the speed you're going. You decide, and then you know the route, and you might have accidents, of course, but the environment doesn't really change, even if
Right.
it rains. Whereas surfing, everything absolutely changes all the time. So the you don't know what you're getting into yourself into the moment you're going into the water. And when the wave arrives, like you're paddling, but you don't know if you're going to catch it. So there's like this hope of maybe I'm going to catch it, and this dream in your brain of like this perfect bliss of
Right.
like the sliding, because as humans we love this sliding sensation. And um and then and then you miss it, and so like you're disappointed, and then you start again, and then you catch the wave and you have this few seconds of bliss, and then you get smashed. And so you have like these oxytocins, but also um like all the stresses, and then you get
Right.
smashed, so you
Adrenaline
need to.
probably.
Yeah. And so it's really interesting because and it's also quite addictive because it's a very randomized approach to the reward. So a
Right.
little bit more like gambling, like you don't
Yeah, I
really
was
know
going to
if you're
say
going to
that.
get a good session. Whereas if you go for a run or a bike ride, you know what you're getting yourself into basically. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think like surf in terms of the highs, I definitely think it's the most rewarding.
That's cool. That's cool. So
Yeah.
let's switch gears and talk a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey, because I think what you've created with Wild AI is so exciting. And as you know, I've been in the health space for roughly 10 years now. Looking at especially female hormones, I mean, there's nothing, I couldn't believe that it took me to my late 20s and going to nutrition school, like a holistic one, for me to learn about the infradian cycle, for us to know. Like, I think you grow up, especially, I don't know about you, but in the US, they're like, you can get pregnant all the time and it's so scary and go on birth control and that's it. You're like, what? And then it's like, wow, wait, we need different things through these 4 phases of our cycle. How incredible. But there was no information on it. And what you're doing is such a gift, I feel like, to women and the medical community. But I would love to hear, the origin and how there was a big obvious hole there, but what brought you into this space?
Yeah, so I think like being a woman in sports, and so I've done a lot of sports, and I'm a data scientist by training. So I studied mathematics and financial risk. I was a quant in a hedge fund and management consultant in AI. So seeing like what you can do with a lot of data sets, and in sports you have a lot of data, but I couldn't understand what was working well for my body, what was working less well, and especially I was training and eating like a man, and clearly I have a very different body, and I could see it very specifically on some use cases. Or so I would ride with guys a bike ride, and one week I would perform really well, and then the other week I would be out of breath, and I couldn't understand, like no science or explanation or coaches could give me any reasons for that. And so I try to understand, is there more that I can understand? And also being a woman in sports, it's pretty grim as a prospect. Like I love sports, but no one really cares. It's like, okay, it's really cute that you like sports, but you're just a woman, basically. And so like, do your thing, but no one cares. There's no money. Media doesn't cover you. Prize monies in races are ridiculous. So that is the reality of women's sports. Still today, like it is very slowly changing, but barely. And so I was very unhappy with the situation. I was like, this is not okay. Like, it's impossible that we have this body and it's just a crappy body. Like, it's like, I'm not okay with that story. And so what can I understand differently? And so that really what led me into this journey. And so we did massive amount of research on the female body. So together with Dr. Stacy Sims, who's the specialist in the field, and we gathered white paper research on what is done on the female body, how to understand it, and we created really from scratch the understanding of the female body. For instance, like out ovulation, what does white paper say on in terms of joint laxity, immunity, nutritional needs, performance potentials, and optimal exercise, etc. And we plotted all of that, and then we created the algorithm taking this knowledge and turning it to something that is usable into an app. And so that's how we created Wild AI. So it's an app for women to eat and train with the menstrual cycle, if they have one, or with their symptoms, if they use a birth control, or if they're menopause. So menstrual cycle is 100% of the time for 40 years when we do have a menstrual cycle. So from the periods to ovulation to the premenstrual symptoms. And then the women who use birth control, it has a lot of implications in terms of your hormones. So if you're taking a combined estrogen, progesterone, or progestin only, or a non-hormonal like a copra IUD, they all act very differently on the body. So this means the reading and the needs of the body are quite different. And then perimenopause
I just want to stop right there, because they don't even talk about that when they put women on birth control, right? They're like, oh, maybe this one doesn't work or that. Like the fact that you're doing research and separating those three things is incredibly important and really generous, right? Because I know I've helped a lot of people off of birth control because it hasn't been helpful for their body, but they barely know what they're doing. So like the fact that you're looking at this in terms of training is incredible.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like and you know, I was talking to a gynecologist last week. I was speaking at a conference, and I was speaking to a gynecologist, and the person was saying, well, like one of the arguments was gynecologists don't give explanations to women on what's what they're getting themselves into when they take a birth control. And she was saying, no, that's not true. Like a lot of the gynecologists would tell you, like, take this one, and then after 6 months we reassess. I'm like, well, this is not information. It's like, this is what we've always been told, but this is not information. Like even if you tell me like this is, progesterone, progestin actually, because it's artificial, but I need to understand what impact you're going to have on my body and not test and learn. Like imagine you telling a guy like, take this pill, come back in 6 months. If it doesn't work, if you're losing your hair and you're getting a lot of belly fats and you are depressed, come back in 6 months, like we'll see, and maybe there's something else that works best for you. And this is really where we are as a society. And so, yeah, we really lack information when it comes to these extremely potent products that we're putting in our bodies.
Yeah. So when you started this journey, what were some of the things that really surprised you that you started learning when you sort of met with the doctor and you're like, where was your mind blown a little bit?
I think that's what I was mind blown. And now I think we're working really hard towards changing that is the messaging that we've been hearing as women is super negative. It's like, you have a shitty body, you're moody and bitchy, you're complicated, you have a period is really annoying. As an athlete, like let's remove your periods because it's much nicer, it's more convenient. And then you have premenstrual symptoms, you're like this crazy person. And then you're pregnant, it's really annoying. And then you're in perimenopause, menopause, it's really annoying. So it's basically like your whole life is just a crappy life. And it's like, well, that is one way of looking at it. But, coming from an athletic perspective is like, you can climb a mountain and thinking, oh, it's cold and it's crappy and there's like this crevasse, it's dangerous. And like, you can complain and moan all the time. You can say, no, it is really difficult, but I am climbing to reach the summit. And I'm so lucky to be able to get there. And I want to praise myself. And I also want, once I've done it, it's like you get the recognition out of it. And I think, and as women, this is what we go through. Like we are the only people who can have kids. Like we create the whole of humanity in our own bodies. It's insane what we're able to do. And we are not praised for it. It's like, she's annoying and she's pregnant. And like society like really is shaped around that. It's like how annoying the female body is and how can we control it. Even new policies such as supposed to support women, the menstrual leave. It's not looking at how we can help women. That's what they think, but it's not looking at they having a pain. Like, how can we solve the pain? Like, this is where the money and the focus should be.
Yes.
It is not normal to have pain. And so, like, to go back to the storyline and the marketing, I think the marketing we've had on our own bodies is really wrong. And I think so to your question, what surprised me is more what we can do really differently and which is really powerful is reframing the female body. And it's like, it is absolutely incredible to have a female body.
Yes.
Like I had a baby, I'm pregnant, and I was like, oh my God, I'm creating all of humanity. Like I am God, It's
yes.
And not only like think that for myself, women think that for themselves, but also men should praise us. It's like, it's an incredible accomplishment instead of saying like it's so annoying. And all of society should really be framed around that.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And I've been in the business essentially of like teaching women how to listen and care for and love their bodies. And when you do, incredible things happen, right? When you understand the nuances and the changes of the 4 phases of the cycle. Or I just thought, I remember thinking it was so cool, like understanding that our intestines are longer than men because of having a baby, right? So our digestive system's a bit longer, and because our enteric nervous system is in your intestines, and that's where we get sort of that intuition, gut feeling. We have more intuition than men do. It's scientifically proven. Like we are, yeah, isn't that cool? But understanding like we are more intuitively gifted. Like our bodies are, like the reason we get autoimmune disease quicker is we're a bit more sensitive because our bodies have to be on alert because we have these babies sometimes that we need to protect, right?
Yeah.
And knowing that like women are so incredible, it is such a disservice that we just assume that we're supposed to be in pain or we should be embarrassed. Or I just remember I would laugh where I would, whenever I was, this is going to be kind of TMI, but dating men, if you couldn't be grossed out by my period, I would yell at you. I'd be like, listen, like you wouldn't exist if we didn't have periods. Like you came out of a vagina, get over it, right? Yeah. We're like, it's incredible what we can do.
Yeah. And it's like also like, it's so interesting when we think we are a more advanced society, and we're, when I say like, we shame periods and we shame women, and people are like, no. And I'm like, okay, do you have period sex? And, I ask in a room, and obviously like people are very shy, and they're like, well, it's from day 3 of the periods, a lot of women have very high sex drive, is a natural lubricant, and is really good for the body, because if she has an orgasm, even if she just has an intercourse, but if she has an orgasm, it's actually massaging the whole area. So it's really good. If she has cramps, it alleviates cramps. And so the science basically is actually going for having period sex, but it is not part of the culture because there's a lot of shame, and it's weird, and it's awkward, and men are not used to interact with this blood, which is the only blood that is not an expression of pain. So, and all the fluids in general, like cervical fluids, we have like these chemical products we can buy over the counter in the pharmacy to hide like smells. And I'm like, where is the sperm smell, like deodorant,
Right. Like, or the ball smell.
Exactly.
Oh, I'm such a period sex bully also. I'm like, if you think this is gross, you're not. Because I agree, right? And I always talk about that. Like, it's good for cramps. It's not something we should be afraid of, or guys should either. And the whole idea, like, where you can monitor the viscosity of your cervical fluid, like our bodies are so incredible. And I think it's just so sad that like I was almost 30 when you started to learn this or understand, like I can feel when I'm ovulating. I'm attuned to a lot of the different phases, or even the fact that I remember the first time I read, I don't know if you're familiar with like Alyssa Vitti's work. She, reading that in the flow for the first time. And she was like, sometimes the best exercise on your period is a nap, and like giving yourself permission to slow down and not always feel like, oh, I have to work out like a man or work out harder. And that being said, could you give us some tips and maybe walk us through some stuff that you recommend during the 4 phases in terms of like training or food or rest or whatever you think would be fun and interesting to share?
Yeah. So first of all, with the argument that we stand, so we started with women who are active. So like the argument we have is, sure, you can have a nap, but actually the female body is always capable of performing. Like it is really good to be able to go into these phases, and to compare phases to something that men can understand is everyone has a day phase. So like you wake up in the morning, you pumped, you go in the evening, you're tired, you go to bed, and it's healthy. And if you don't respect that, once it doesn't matter, but over time, night shifters have more disease and live shorter. And it is similar for women. What I mean is that we have a naturally ingrained menstrual cycle. If we don't respect it over time, it impacts us negatively. And this is why it leads to our bodies having pains and chronic pains and chronic conditions because we are not in tune with the needs of our bodies. And so the menstrual cycle so starts with the periods, and then we lead up to ovulation, and then we go down towards the premenstrual symptoms. So it's like, and so the way to look at it is, contrary to a lot of beliefs, a period doesn't necessarily mean it's the lowest time for the woman. It's probably more the premenstrual symptoms, and for some women, day 1 and day 2 of their periods, generally speaking. But then again, it's different for all women. But if we take that principle, which is a general population one, and then day 3 is actually like the moment where you can really start ramping up high intensity workouts up to ovulation. So ovulation is a time where you ovulate. You can also get pregnant in the 5 days window. And it's a time where the body is, in terms of very subjective, you will feel more eager to go out. You have high sex drive. You're very good at convincing. You can hit high intensity workouts. And then interestingly, it's also the time where your immunity is the lowest, because our bodies are meant not to attack the sperm. And then after a few days after ovulation, this is a time where it's really primed to go more inwards. So in terms of workouts, this is great to do low endurance runs or stability workouts. And in terms of nutrition, when we ovulate, we need carbs and fats. And it's really counter marketing for women again. Like, we're not told eat carbs and fats. Your body actually craves it and needs it. And this is why when a man and a woman start exercising at the same time in the gym, the guy will get leaner and fitter, and the woman eats less and exercises more, and she gains belly fat because her body is starving. And he's like, okay, starvation equals stock up. I'm going to stock up. So and so she's like, well, I don't understand. And that's what happens basically.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of articles and there's a lot more awareness around this now, but like even like women doing tons of HIIT training all the time and then not being able to lose weight and having like the high cortisol levels and training harder and then cutting more carbs. And a big thing that I do with people is really just getting them in tune with like, what are you craving? What do you, how do you want to move? If you're sleeping, how do you feel when you eat these things? And really trying to honor those cravings, understanding that like, yes, if you eat candy bars every day, you'll want to eat candy bars every day. You'll feel like shit, but understanding the difference between that, and it's incredibly important. And I love that. I was looking through your website, and I mean, what you guys are offering is so incredible. And I love especially that you're talking there, all of the phases in terms of like perimenopause, menopause, looking at like around, getting pregnant and post. What are the big differences between like perimenopause and menopause in terms of like training or eating? Are there big things that you need to start doing once? Well, obviously it's going to be different, but are there one or two big things that really need to change once you hit menopause?
Yeah, so just to start with a bit of vocabulary. So perimenopause is this 1 to 10 years period where you have hormonal fluctuations and symptoms. So symptoms can be anything from brain fog, memory loss, fats getting in new places and and losing less, like in a different way that you used to, feeling weaker, sleeping less well, and then the hot flushes. But that is actually only one of the many, many symptoms. And then menopause is the 12 months birthday of not having a period. And then post-menopause is the 24 months birthday of not having a period. And so the time leading up to menopause, so the perimenopause time, is actually really fascinating because you are still sometimes or often ovulating. So you might still have a period, but you start having like a lot of these fluctuations, and your sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone, are like, they start to like really change in terms of quantity and impact on the body. What it also leads to is, it means that our bone density goes down over time. So we can, like, aging is amazing, means we're alive. So preparing for aging is really the key message that for us, we prone is like, how can you think of it in a way that is great for you, basically. And so that's what we are advocating, basically. So in terms of what it means, like at the beginning of the transition time, you might have more weight, more body fat, less muscles, more symptoms, and more disease risk, and the bone density going down over time as well. So the perimenopause is really about preparing your body for that, and also knowing what might happen to you and how to prepare around that. In terms of exercise, how it translates, it's really focusing on things that women typically don't do, which is weightlifting. It's really important to continue growing this, like slowing down and growing your bone density capacity, because that's why we hear our mom or grandma fell in the bathtub and broke her hips, is because her bone density is lower. And so we need to prepare for that. And then when we enter menopause, this is more of a stabilization phase. So interestingly, menopause is actually the very tricky time is probably the perimenopausal time, because there's all this huge variation in the body going through these variations. And then menopause and postmenopause, it's a stabilization time.
And that's great to just differentiate that, right? Because again, with everything like periods being sucky, menopause is the worst. Like women are just starting to come to me with questions about this and needing to understand a little bit more about what they should be doing. And the weightlifting thing we hear a lot, and it sounds like that is something we should all be doing all the time.
Absolutely. And in terms of nutrition, fats are really important. Protein is extremely important for women as well. And there's new research as well looking at collagen and creatine, which creatine, like traditionally, is also a man's thing, but healthy it's actually also important for women to continue building the bone and muscle masses.
Interesting. Yeah, you don't hear about that. And collagen, like collagen protein, like adding like the collagen powders, that kind of thing?
Like specifically which brands and which forms, I can't tell you, but like some like research, so I need to be more educated on that. But yeah, research now says like it's quite positive, and it's important to get into to get it. The more naturally, the better. But
Yeah. And this might be a stupid question, and I'm the one who works in nutrition, so maybe I should know the answer to this. But besides like chewing cartilage, like where is there a way to get that through food? Collagen?
Yeah, I don't know. I think like eating all these fatty, like I guess fatty fish and things like that. But I don't know.
Yeah. Because it was so big, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, and I was putting it in all my smoothies all the time. But then you were hearing, oh, it's the best thing. And, like anything else in wellness, it's like, it's the best thing ever. It's not that great. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. And then, of course, you like let go of it. But it makes sense.
I think for everything, and that's something we really advocate, is the most important is to be able to, if you start a new type of behavior, is to track yourself, because only person who can really understand if it's positive or not is yourself, because our bodies are so different. There is really no general recommendation. So it obviously asks for more work, but this is the only real way to understand if it's positive.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more, because we are all so different, and what we need is so different. And especially, to the degree that you're training or here, and what is it even, just curious, you're obviously quite an athlete. How does pregnancy affect that? Like, do you still train pretty hard initially? When do you kind of slow things down? How's it going?
I think my previous pregnancy, I had a lot of things to prove to myself, like thinking I'm not sick, I'm pregnant. And so I want to, to see if it's true, actually, like what I'm thinking and what I'm proning, is it true? And it is. I think it's really true. What I did allow myself is like, and because I'm very into action, I also really wanted to live the pregnancy as a time for me, my body, and the baby to go into a mode that is respectful for the progression of my body. So it was a really good learning, not only the pregnancy, but the postpartum time, which is, just really listening to my body and not pushing the limits. And it's actually really interesting, because when I got pregnant, I think like crossing the street, for instance, like I have a tendency of crossing the street a little bit, like in a dangerous way, I would say. But certainly when I was pregnant, I'm not thinking for myself. I'm thinking like, am I putting someone else in danger? that I
Yeah.
care a lot. And so
Yeah.
like similar for sports, I'm suddenly like not thinking, because I've always done sports in a way that I really wanted to. I had a lot of things to prove. I'm a woman. I really wanted to compete at the same level as men. So I think I've always had a lot of things to prove. So really pushing myself, and if I can do it, I can do it too. So okay, I'm going to continue. And and this is a big reason, probably also like I did all these extreme sports. Is that I just like I want to see if I can do all these things. And then suddenly when I was pregnant, I was like, I do want to do sports for sure, but I don't
Hmm.
have to push limits.
Hmm.
So it was a very different mindset. So I was surfing until I was like 9 months pregnant, and it was great. But
That
I
must
was
have been interesting in terms of learning new balance, right? Because
yeah
your center of gravity is a little bit different. That must have been fun to see too on the beach. You're like, look at that woman. She's
yeah
killing it.
it's super sexy. I was like squatting with my ass up, and my partner like pushing me in the wave. It's like it's quite funny. It's like these like women with like huge belly. It's like it's really really funny. And we have pictures, and it's like actually like really funny.
I
The
bet.
like to be able to get up on the wave is like it's actually quite tricky, but it was
Yeah,
really
I
fun.
bet.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's like, so I was definitely exercising, definitely like doing sports, and my thinking around it. And I was, yeah, I went skiing. I went. So my thinking was, if I will not put myself into a situation where I think I will be in danger, like this is actually
Hmm.
stupid. But in
Hmm.
the sports that I think I can understand my exposure and my limit, like my risk level, I will do
Hmm.
them, because there's
Hmm.
very very little science that says around like can you do sports or not. And
Right.
whereas being active is clear, has clear benefits on the pregnancy,
Yeah.
then the risk is if you injure yourself, of course, and especially around the stomach, and also like your joint laxity is you're more lax. But I'm a good skier, so I was thinking like it doesn't, like it shouldn't, like if I feel unsafe, I will stop. So I think that was a very big difference of mindset, is that I would not push. Like
Yeah.
was a
Good.
clear limit from in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I get so many women coming to me postpartum, and maybe it's only 6 months out, and they're like, I want to get my body back. Or, like, what should I do? And the biggest thing I tell new moms is, you know, it takes a couple years. I think 2 years to get your hormones completely balanced again. What's the rush? Like, do you have any, since you've been through this already, do you have
Mm.
any, and I know everyone's different, but any advice or mindset stuff about the postpartum phase when you start moving again?
Yeah, there's this like myth of the 6 weeks. So like there's a 6 weeks gynecologist visit, and the guy like took out of his drawer an IUD, which is this size, and he was like, "Do you want me to put that as a contraceptive?" And I was like, back off. Like I literally just pushed a human out of my body. Like you don't approach my vulva. Like no way. And why don't you suggest something to my partner, by the way? Like, it's like, why would I have to take the burden of, like, it's like absolutely no way. And so, but the 6 weeks is like, I mean, I was still very, very, um, raw. I think that's the term. And, we have this, I think it's a very city mindset to be
Mhm.
like, I want to get my body back. And it's like, and if it's your life, you can. But I also think that it's very interesting. Like I had spoken a really long time ago to a woman who's an athlete, and she had 2 kids, and she had her first child, she told me, as an athlete, and she had her second child as a mother. And she thinks
Mm.
that as an athlete, she really pushed through, because as an athlete, like you push through, it is not comfortable. Like you're not staying in your comfort zone, you're not progressing. But this is not really what happens through pregnancy. Pregnancy is a lot of like getting into the body and getting into what the baby needs, and is this very harmonious dance between the baby and the mother. And the postpartum is this beautiful time where we're discovering a new human. and
Mhm.
um and it's really interesting. Like I'm learning a lot about myself, and the acceptance, because I had a lot of, like, for my first pregnancy, I had a lot of resentment toward my partner, who was able to do so much more into sports. And
Mhm.
so I was resentful. And then I thought, okay, there's no point actually to be resentful, because it's like I am actually also having something amazing, which is I'm growing a human. And for the postpartum, it's again, society doesn't tell us it's a beautiful time. And you've grown a baby for 9 months. I had a miscarriage before, so like I had been pregnant for quite a while before having given birth. And so if you grow if it goes for 9 months to grow, like 6 weeks is very, very short. And
Yeah.
sure, I could go back into water because, I'm not, I probably will have like my risk of having infections is much lower, but doesn't mean I can go back to like the same level of sports. I think it's like, again, I think you are absolutely capable of doing it. My way of doing it was to don't think as an athlete, like this is not the time for me I'm not a professional athlete. This is not my life. I could definitely do it if I was a professional athlete. Like women are capable of doing it. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But for me, it
Yeah.
was like, I just thought this is the time to go into time with this baby. So I'll give you some examples. Like I used to love waking up before 6 a.m. Like for me, it was a success. I was like, okay, I woke up early. If I was in London, I went to swim in the water, in the nice water. I feel like this is successful beginning of my day. And then when I had
Yeah.
my baby, I would be like in bed with her, cuddling her and breastfeeding her in the morning and having this very cocooning time in the morning, reading a book and writing my thoughts and, planning my day on paper, on a notebook, not to have and having breakfast in bed. And it was a very cuddling time, which I've never had before in my life. And I would never offer myself. But then I was like, actually, that's the right time.
Oh, that's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I love that you're open to allowing that change, right? Because I think what you were saying before, a lot of women, we put so much pressure, and there's just so much pressure on us in general, right? To be able to do everything and look great doing it. To be like, you know what? No, I'm going to have this new experience. I'm going to celebrate the fact that, well, it's different and maybe challenging and not what it, not part of my self concept that I can expand and explore. That's incredible. I'm
Yeah.
excited to hear what this next baby teaches you and allows you to expand into, because I'm sure it's just, I mean, I don't have kids, but I think it's so incredible that we can create and weird and gross that we can grow humans inside of us, and that our bodies, like our breast milk has the exact thing that the baby needs. Like we're incredible.
It's
We're
insane.
incredible.
It's insane. And another thing that's like, I think is quite toxic for women is like this 6 weeks postpartum thing. So I gained around 14 kilos, and a few days after the baby was born, I lost 7 kilos because it's the baby and the fluids and things like that.
Yep.
But then the rest of the weights, like it is weight that was really important for my body to sustain the life of another human. And I'm breastfeeding, so I'm still sustaining the life of another human. For 6 full months, I sustained the life entirely, 100% of my child. And she doubled in weight. It's crazy what the body's doing. And so losing the weight very quickly is not very healthy. And I know
Yeah.
women who have lost the weight and they were like very proud of saying after 6 weeks or after 10 weeks, I was on a pre-pregnancy weight. And it's fine, but it's not like when you think of how much effort the body needs to recover, because it's a recovery phase. We've been through such a huge, tremendous physical feat. And so and it's interesting because women don't have their periods back for quite a while after and postpartum for various reasons. One is they just don't have the ovulation back, or they're breastfeeding, which might delay it, but also very often they're underfeeding themselves. And so they don't have a period back because they don't provide the right nutritional values, whereas the body really, really needs support at that time because we are recovering. And so it's important to know if you're not getting, and they think it's normal, I don't have my periods back, but is it because you're underfed, or are you feeding your body the right way, providing the right things and providing the right things to your body? So I think that's very important, the differentiation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I didn't realize that. And I think that's really important because women, I think, often are underfed.
Yeah.
Or are getting the wrong things, or I think we're getting away from this, but even like worrying about calories, right? They're getting not enough things like fat and protein, and worrying about, oh god, the wrong things. So I think it's a really beautiful space to be an athlete, right? Because you have to get a certain amount of, caloric density and protein for your body to work, and to not be making it smaller, to be stronger. And that's something I always want to impart on. It's like, be in the experience, not looking at the experience, right? How do you feel in your body, and do
Yeah.
you feel strong, and how did that make you feel? And I think there's something really beautiful about and I'd love to talk a little bit more about what you offer with Wild AI, because it's also like a beautiful awareness tool, right? Because you're having people kind of track and pay attention. So it looks like, I mean, you have coaches, there's a community there. I even saw there's like supplement packages. Do you want to share a little bit about all of the amazing things Wild AI has to offer?
Yeah, so it's an app. You can download it, WILD.AI. And so if you menstruate, you use any birth control. We cover 148 birth controls. Or if you're in perimenopause, menopause, you can use the app. And so the way it works is you download the app, and then we take data from manual input and wearables if you have a wearable. If not, just manual input. We aggregate these two together, gives you a female readiness score, and based on the score, insights. So what is optimal for you to do today, and actual practical recommendations. So heat high intensity workouts, or like more stability workouts, or like go for a short slow run. And then so exercise, nutrition, supplements, and recovery. So that's in the app. And as you said, we launched our own supplements recently, so that's will be soon in the app. It's on the website. And then on the flip side of that, we have a coach dashboard. So if you're a coach, or if you are a nutritionist working with women, you can see where all the women you work with are in the cycle or in the life stage, and then see all the data and all the recommendations that we provide to the women. And then you can overwrite that, because you are the ultimate like human. So you have we do something really well is crunching data sets, but the human in the loop is the most important. So we facilitate the work of people who work with women. And so that's us.
That must be, I hope you have a lot of male trainers using this with their teams. And I would think this would be an incredible resource for well, none of us know, but a whole population that has no idea.
Yeah, and we have a coach academy, so we're training people on what is the female physiology 101,
Oh,
and
wow.
how can so they it's a course basically, and then you're accredited, and yeah, so it has a lot of success with women and men coaches and nutritionists. Yeah.
That's amazing. So what are you most excited about in terms of like the future of this space, or with Wild AI? Like what are your dreams, or what are you, excited about, things that are coming up?
I think what is crazy is that we have a product. So like our ambition is to that it becomes so democratized that women have access to this information at a wide scale. And we have a big work, which is the educational aspect, and we have a tech product. So in 5 years, I think it would be insane for any company to treat women as men, which they are right now. And so this is our big work, and yeah, we're doing well on that, but there's still so much to do. And we tackle 3 life stages, but there's so many more life stages to cover, from um, prepartum, IVF, egg freezing, pregnancy, postpartum, endometriosis, PCOS, IBS, miscarriage, abortion. It's like, women go for these massive life stages, which
Yeah.
massively impact their hormonal changes. So
Yeah.
what can I do best for my body to feel it the best way possible? Because I have either naturally or artificially hormonal changes.
Yeah. And are you seeing, as you've progressed in the space, are you seeing things change, or is it still pretty slow?
I definitely see feelings change. So, 3 years ago, when I was saying cycle syncing or train of your menstrual cycle, people had no understanding of what I was talking about. Even menstrual cycle, people thought it was just a period. And so now I definitely see a lot of uptake around the science and the notions around it. I mean, it's like you can
Mhm.
see TikTok, like it's becoming like quite widespread, which is great in a certain way. Um, Having said that, a lot of the money and the investments stay like basically managed by men, and
Yeah.
today still 80% of the medical research is done on males. So it's still like pretty drastic. And when you look at wearable companies, they do a little bit, like Apple Watch, they have a peer tracker. Whoop, Aura, you name it, all of them basically. But it's very, very tiny. So it's like, it's actually quite, it's it's nearly an insult, you know. It's like, well, okay, you have,
Yeah.
oh, you're a woman, you have a period, okay, great, we solved you. It's like, what about if you take birth control? What about if you know, like, it's not an edge case. If you're in perimenopause, you know, it's like, if
Right.
you're above 40, you are probably in perimenopause. So like, what about these women? You know, it's like, it's so, yeah, so there's still a lot to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being one of the few who is actually making an impact. And I mean, it's exciting. Again, I've been in this space for like 10 plus years to
Yeah.
start to see this happen and to be able to continue to learn, right? Because there just was nothing out there. So thank you. I know you're so incredibly busy, and as you should be, because everyone should be buying this product, hearing you. I love that even what you're talking about, and we don't even think about, but you know, if anyone takes anything from this conversation, the idea that like our whole lives, like, oh, we have this shitty body with periods and we're such a drag, where it's like, no, we're fucking incredible. And like, why has that been the narrative? We're so powerful. Like, I love that, you know, you have that messaging. And yeah, thank you. And before we wrap up, I just have to ask my final question. So, I mean, you're obviously someone who really is willing to go there, go the extra mile, really challenge yourself. And I'm sure you have all these incredible tools. When life hands you some unexpected lemons, how do you make lemonade? How do you pick yourself back up when, you know, you're handed a big disappointment and love through it?
I cry. I write things down a lot. I would call the people I need support from, my sisters or my parents. I think growing up, I was very tough with myself, and I thought being strong was not crying. So I started crying
Yeah.
very late in my life, like in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think now is actually a power. And when I see my very close male friends who are not able to cry, I relate to it because I was like that for many years in my young life. But I think it's actually a release. Someone was telling me it's the words coming out as water. And it's just like sometimes there's no real expression, but there is this, the body has this physical release of the stresses. So I embrace that.
Yes.
And then because I think now it's really good to take time to recognize that step and not just brush it out, because otherwise it just like grows and bubbles inside. And then it's like I go I'm fairly efficient at going into action plans. So when I have a big disappointment, and being an entrepreneur, they are happening all the time. So it's like having a slap, you know, every single day. Like I'm super excited about, I don't know, a partnership and then it falls through, or an investor that is my dream and they say no, they just stop replying entirely, or an amazing team member who resigns. So it's like it is it is very personal, very regularly.
Yeah.
So it's just like shaking things off. And I write a lot. So like being able to write, and I have support networks. So I have a group of entrepreneurs that I meet once a month. I have a therapist. I have a coach. I have a accountability partner. So I have a lot of people that I have chosen around me to be able to, rely on and call for help, because I think it's actually a strength to be able to ask for help.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. I love that. The crying is so important. And I feel like that's been the biggest part of my job is teaching people how to do that, because
Yeah.
often we eat instead of crying, or
Yeah.
drink instead of crying,
Exactly.
or
And I think
scroll instead of crying.
another big point actually to important to mention is I would go to sports as well, because I think
Mhm.
it's good to take a pause. Like crying is important, but then like for instance for me going into the ocean is amazing. It's like I get out
Yeah.
of it and I'm like my body is just so happy and I feel
Yeah.
so released. It changes my day, or I see, you know, like I see the water and the sun. It's like, yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Helene. This has been such a delight. I I feel like I sleep better at night knowing women like you exist and are moving things forward for all of us. So thank you on behalf of all women, because you're making the world a
Yeah,
better place and we're
very
understanding
good.
our bodies more, which means we can be even more powerful. And you are someone to continue to watch. And guys, check out this app. It's incredible at any stage of your life. If you want to learn more on how to take care of yourself, I think this is such a beautiful tool. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Lianna. So excited to be on your podcast.